All right, I'd like to call to order the Design Review Subcommittee meeting of Wednesday, February 15th. And we'll start with the approval of minutes, which I have here. And did my fellow commissioners get a chance to look at those?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess we'll take a vote on approval.
Any changes? Then I'll move we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee, December 14th, 2022.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's approved. I'll sign that when we get a pen from somebody. Thank you.
The red pencil would have been good. Nice to have.
Okay, let's move on. We have one item on the agenda today. That's a Cultural Heritage Permit 22-281, Miramar Event Center and Restaurants. Applicants initiated modifications to Courtyard Pergola, 150 West Avenida Pico. Do we have a presentation?
We do have a presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan Lightfoot, Economic Development Officer, with the report on behalf of the Planning Division. And I do have a PowerPoint presentation that will be on file with the Planning Division. So the project in front of you today is an amendment request to entitlements that were reviewed previously by the city and approved by the Planning Commission in 2017. Those entitlements were subsequently reviewed and approved by the California Coastal Commission with minor amendments to the courtyard approved in 2020. The current proposal takes into account a wedding venue tenant that is requesting a rooftop space for ceremonies. This next slide shows the approved site plan from 2017. The green portion that you see there is the bowling alley element of the larger Miramar property, and the yellow is the theater building. This slide shows the elevations from the approved version in 2017. Again, the Miramar Theater off to the left and the bowling alley repurposed as a food hall off to the right. And a quick summary of the proposed changes in front of you today. The primary element of change is an expansion of the pergola from 1,652 square feet to 1,924, and a transition from that being a shade structure to a solid roof structure. It would host wedding ceremonies on the roof of that structure with transition of some new materials, including stucco, exposed timber, and wrought iron. This deck would add 2 wrought iron stairwells, as well as a glass enclosed accessible lift. And there would be decorative gates to block stairwell access while there was no event occurring. The plans in front of you also include a sidewalk on private property along the Miramar building. This replaces about 380 square feet of landscape area. No trees are proposed to be removed, but smaller plants would be lost in this area. And it's also presumed that a wall fountain would be removed from that wall of the theater building. The ramp from the sidewalk into the courtyard does shift inward south to account for that private walkway addition. And finally, in interior of the courtyard bar is shifted west towards the Pico frontage to accommodate for the new stairwells and lift. So this slide here shows the area of work in blue, the area of modification. So there's no modifications to the buildings themselves, but to the exterior and courtyard area. This rendering shows an overlay of the proposed deck, the expanded pergola into the deck in front of the bowling alley building. So it incorporates that element but to the 2017 elevation. So the rendering here, the artwork is not the current architect's work. It just imposes that element onto the building. I added this one so you can see on the left is one element that was approved by the city previously, where this was prior 2 arches, it's now 3. And then this elevation element shows a little bit more clearly than the rendering, the scale of the deck that is being proposed. This call out, of course, is the gate element that would be on either side of the stairwells and closed during non-operation. And to the right of the stairwells is the shifted location of the exterior patio bar. This is a bit long, but I think worth the read. This is an excerpt from the 2013 Historic Structures Report. And this is specifically on page 5-8. So not pages 5 through 8, this is page 5-8. While the architecturally unadorned north facade currently figures prominently in the view afforded to the bowling center to pedestrian and vehicular traffic, it is important to bear in mind that the north facade has been historically obscured by a variety of commercial structures and was never intended to provide a strong architectural focus. The south facade is similarly unadorned. Both facades display the remnants of numerous modifications to the layout of windows and doors over the building's history. The flexible nature of the bowling center's non-load-bearing wood-framed walls makes these modifications easily repairable while providing the same flexibility to possible adaptive reuse efforts. And these are images that are pulled directly from that Historic Structures Report. This is before the applicants for the 2017 entitlements got underway, but this was the guiding document that they used in determining or in evaluating a potential project at the site. And as you can see, there's just different elements conceived as possible for this courtyard area. A few staff recommendations are included here. That the applicant look at tastefully separating the wedding party path and travel within the courtyard from guests who are dining. Planters or other screening elements might alleviate some of the awkwardness of these transitions. Consider DG, decomposed granite, instead of concrete for the walkway to maintain a more natural look and to limit the changes to the WQMP. That is a current staff comment that they're going to have to take a look at, is amending the existing WQMP. And then return the wall fountain, which is in that area of the walkway, currently shown as removed on the north wall of the Miramar Theater building to minimize the alterations to that elevation. Some just additional notes for consideration or for background. The occupancy of the site is not increased while there is a change in where people are going to be at the property as a whole. There is not an increase in occupancy or parking requirements for the property based off of the submittal that we are looking at. A noise study has been provided and is going to be independently reviewed. So that's something that's a staff comment. Obviously, that's not a focus of the design review board, but will be in front of the planning commission later on. The project has other staff review corrections, such as updated landscape plans and that WQMP that was already referenced, since there is additional impervious surface as proposed. And then just a quick note that per condition of approval 60 from the 2017 entitlements, this amendment will return to the zoning administrator. The ZA has authority to refer items to the PC. I do expect that to be the case with this project, that while the condition specified a return of amendments to the ZA, I think this will be something that is reviewed by the Planning Commission. So that concludes the staff presentation. The applicant representative is here, so if you all would like to introduce yourselves and then provide any additional commentary on the project, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. My name is Steve Waldron. I'm the one of the principals at Architects Local. We've been working on the project since I think 2019 when it moved from the Coastal Commission conclusion, doing all the building permits, and have been working with Jonathan through that time. I think one thing that's important to note is that the tenant for the weddings would not have a wedding happening in the wedding center and on this pergola at the same time. It would be one party happening in one of the two locations, which is why there's no increase in occupancy, because it would be in either or. So they would move within the property boundary from the pergola to a reception within the theater space. As a result of the wedding party moving through the space, I'd like to consider that there will be wedding dresses, bridesmaid dresses, high heels, tuxedos, and such moving through. So that is one of the reasons why we currently have concrete for the path from the plaza space over to the wedding venue. So I am definitely conscientious of the effect that rainwater and everything has, and the amount of impervious surface that we've looked to increase on this. I think trying to find some way in which the formal attire is not marred would be a worthwhile consideration. Everything else that is a staff recommendation, I think, would be more than happy to accommodate. And so maybe there's some sort of working medium for recommendation number 2.
My name is Kai Fishman. I'm project architect with Architects Local. I've been dealing with construction aspects of the project for about a year now. Is coming on board, so that's about it. Pretty in-depth knowledge of the project at this point.
Okay, that's all you got? Anybody from, I suppose somebody else from the public probably wants to speak on this?
You want to go first?
I'm Linda Sadeghi. I'm your neighbor at the Casino Subcommittee, and we have operated a wedding venue, primarily wedding venue, but private event venue for the last 10 years now, and learned a lot of lessons. I think a lot of my most important questions are not design related, but operations related, and I've reviewed some of those with Jonathan in a prior meeting, so I don't know if this is the right opportunity to ask those questions. But being your neighbor and also having a capacity of 300 guests, which we often have, and then the Beach Club is also our joint neighbor across the street. I think their capacity is closer to 125, 150. So it will very well happen that we all have weddings on the same time. I know you're not the operator, but as far as processing, I'm concerned about deliveries. Weddings take a lot of deliveries, caterers, amenities, florists, rented furniture. Are you intending to have permanent furniture on this pergola, or is furniture going to go up and down? A lot of weddings, they want their own chairs, they want their own amenities, so up and down stairs, up and down elevators. Does furniture, how easily can that be transported? Where is it going to be delivered? I'm very concerned about Desheka. We've lost our parking off 60% of that street while this project has been under construction for, it seems like, a long time. And we'd like that back. It's an attraction to vagrants right now, and we're constantly, and we don't see care from the construction crew as far as fencing and the graffiti and the homeless sleeping on your side of the fence. So I'm concerned about that ongoing. But if deliveries are going to happen there, what are the hours of those deliveries? Because they will impact parking on that street for both of us. Are you going to eliminate parking on that side of the street? Because then I will really throw a fit. We need every nearby parking space available, especially for a lot of our senior citizen customers that you will have also. Deliveries, when you get foodstuffs, even for your food hall, we run a food hall in Anaheim, that packing house, and there's food trucks delivering foodstuffs all the time, and we have to really govern hours of delivery so we don't interrupt patrons and interrupt our neighbors with noise. So what are your guidelines? When are deliveries happening? Is that happening on Desheka also? Because I would have a concern about that. I think Jonathan clarified that trash pickup will be on the El Camino Real side. So I'd just like that confirmed. I don't think any of us want trash trucks coming down to Desheka and picking up trash on that side. So primarily operational. A question to the city is, if you're going to have everyone park in the public parking, the 304 spaces there between Pico and Metrolink, That's great. I know there's enough parking there. We don't have any issues, when us and the beach club have conjoined events right now. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about safety of people crossing that street. That's what I'm terrified of, especially a food hall is going to draw families and kids. And that can become a busy street, especially with big trucks coming, delivering foodstuffs. So what's the plan there? Is there going to be a crosswalk light? And is that being planned now? Is it going to go kitty corner, Pico to your side? And how is that going to work? So these are all more operational questions. DG for us is a winner. I think as a patron of all historical structures. I mean, we're famous for taking historical structures primarily and repurposing them. I greatly appreciate that this historic structure, these two historic structures are being cared for now. So I applaud that effort, but where was I going with that? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I have a lot to say. Oh, DG, thank you. The beauty I feel of North Beach are the beautiful lawns of the beach club, and I have tried to mimic that in a more artificial way, but to have that same welcoming, long green lawn. I mean, North Beach was the welcome center to San Clemente, and I think that is kind of an iconic feature of all the historic structures there. And now suddenly we have hardscape, sidewalk to sidewalk, with the Miramar and the theater, and I think that's a lost opportunity. I mean, I appeared at the Coastal Commission when they were getting final approval, and I lamented like that whole ground level courtyard that you're using for eating from the food court. I wish that was a green lawn, because coming down Pico, wouldn't it be beautiful to see all these green lawns and these historic structures and seeing their outline? And I feel like we're losing that now at the Miramar, and especially at the bowling alley. If you're going to put that platform and have people up there, then you've lost the beautiful roof line of the bowling alley. So I feel like that's another loss. I think I see it chipping away of the historic silhouette, and I lament that. DG at least is a natural element. We have that in our rock garden. In the back, it's a very practical surface, and we have 100% of our wedding customers have their ceremonies back there, and they're walking in their bridal gowns across DG, and they love it because it's a natural environment, it's a unique environment, it reflects the history of the area with natural elements. So that's my 2 cents, I guess.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Wayne Eccleston. I'll speak very plainly today. I was on the City Council for 12 years. My term ended in 2010, and then for some odd reason I went to the Planning Commission for 40 years.
How long?
Pardon me?
For how long?
4 years.
Oh, 40. I thought you said 40.
It sounded, it felt that
well,
way, yes.
Must have been young when you were on City Council.
It did feel that way.
Sorry.
Jim Holloway, who was the previous development director here in San Clemente, he retired. He got his place there, replaced him, and when he retired, Jim and I decided we needed to do something with the Miramar. So we contacted the previous owner and worked with him. I worked with him on a volunteer basis. Jim worked for him on a fee basis in order to get these original plans approved by the Planning Commission, the City Council, and ultimately by a unanimous decision by the California Coastal Commission. We worked diligently on these plans. One of our main purposes, and I'm sure some local historians here, Jonathan, are going to disagree vehemently with the thing that you read, the first thing that you read, because we really felt that, in fact, the view from El Camino of the bowling alley, once it was rebuilt, would be an important feature here in San Clemente and not blocked by a pergola that was extended above the roof line of the Miramar Theater, which will be a rebuilt historic structure. So we feel very lamented, as you have said before, about that pergola rebuilt on that, which really hides the iconic historic building there. And I'm not in favor of that at all. I understand there's been construction of the pergola with some framing above the pergola itself. I think there's some pictures that someone has here of that. I don't think that has been approved. And that's something that should be taken into consideration here. It's certainly up to the owners. It's not up to anybody else if they want to have weddings there. But it seems an odd place for a wedding overlooking the 7-Eleven, one of the most busiest intersections in San Clemente, a view of the car wash, and of course a view of one of the dive bars in San Clemente. So I just find the current plans to be really not acceptable at all from a historic standpoint and a visual standpoint. And so I will be against it, and I will be very verbal about it, because I just think that we're losing a part of our historic atmosphere here that we do not have to lose. And as a historian, I just find that to be really unfortunate.
Thank you. Larry? Yes.
I'm not good, like these two, at spelling without my papers. I've got a few notes I'll refer to. Forgive me. Jonathan, we love you, but I'm really stunned that you're recommending that this project go to the zoning administrator. The argument that staff seems to be using to justify this project comes from the Miramar Historic Structures Report. That phrase, that paragraph that Jonathan read earlier, regarding the north elevation of the bowling alley where the elevated deck is proposed, quote, "It is important to bear in mind that the north facade has been historically obscured by a variety of commercial structures and was never intended to provide strong architectural focus. But it's also important to note that the unique arched roof is a character-defining feature. The view of that feature seen by most people is from the north side. That view needs to be kept as open as possible. A major concession was already made to the applicant with the approval of that new addition in the tower. I find it a weak argument that just because some schlocky building that included a gas station and a garage were once on that lot, that we should allow buildings there again. We should not repeat our past mistakes. Regarding the lot, that same report from 2013 goes on to suggest two possible options. Option one had a new retail building on the lot. Option two had a new public plaza. The applicant got a new building, and we did not get a public plaza. We got a private plaza. The approved project was supported by everyone because of the promise of the open, sunken deck that would not obscure the bowling alley. The problem of the big, ugly white wall was solved by the addition of attractive fenestration. Could you put that slide up at that north elevation? Yeah.
All right, let me go back to the.
When we saw that, whatever it was, 5 years ago, we did backflips. I mean, it's beautiful. Great plan. The problem with that big, ugly white wall was solved with the fenestration that doesn't hide, but it actually accentuates the character, defining feature, that arched roof. The north view, the applicant's rendering gives a hint. Could you put up the applicant's, the next? Yes.
This one?
That's it, right. The applicant's rendering gives a hint of the negative effect that a deck, wall, and railing would have. The arched roof is partially obscured. The increased and raised busyness distracts the eye from the roof. The rendering does not seem to show the stairwells or the lift. Also missing is the darkness that would be under that deck. All that lovely fenestration would be hidden. The west view, can you show that, Jonathan?
I can, but I don't have it in this presentation. Give me one moment.
Yeah, that's the one. The west view, the proposed elevated deck with the accompanying stairways and elevators would significantly distract from the appearance of the character-defining west elevation of the bowling alley. The facade would lose its independence and singularity. The open space between the approved pergola and the bowling alley would be filled with steps and gates and an elevator. It would appear attached to the deck. The building would look like it was one with that deck, and that deck is big, instead of being a nice open airy space like it is in the rendering above. I do not think that the applicant's renderings truly show how dark, just like on the other elevation, it doesn't show how dark it's going to be underneath there. It's already the north elevation, so you're getting less sun than you would on any other elevation, and here you're going to have a massive deck, solid. About the size of the deck. I got these to pass up. Bart, Commissioner. This is from the report, a close-up of the proposed roof deck elevation. Now, it was said at the very beginning of the report, Jonathan, that it was going to expand the deck size from 1,652 to 1,924. That would be a 16% increase. I did a little looking. It looks to me like the deck is actually going to add about 21 and a half feet. 21 and a half lineal feet. That would add an extra 563 feet for a total of 2,215, not 1,924. That's a 34% increase, not 16%. That's a lot of darkness. And what about the stairs and elevator? I don't know if you count that into the area that's being added, but if you do, it's an additional 333 square feet. So that total area that you're adding there is 2,548. So I don't believe that this project is consistent with the approved project. Please advise the applicant that such major deviations from the approved project are not acceptable. Any deviation from the approved project should go to the full planning commission. I think you said that earlier. I hope it doesn't go past right here, but if it does go further on, please send it to planning and not just to zoning administrator. The Miramar Event Center and Food Hall project was considered long and hard, and the approved project should not be compromised.
Thank you. Karen, I see you back there. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I'm just here observing.
Okay.
I think you should at least share that I'm on the planning commission.
Yeah, maybe you didn't know that. All right, so I think that's all we have on our presentation here. We can, well, you guys have been here before, I assume, right? So
Yes.
You know that we're not an approval body, that we're just here to discuss and make recommendations that will then go to either the ZA or the Planning Commission. In this case, probably the Planning Commission. So I'd like to just kind of open it up to my...
Yeah, let's open up for questions to applicant and staff.
Let's do that.
I'll start, Jonathan. So what is the actual approval process at this point in time?
So the actual approval process would be to follow the existing condition of approval. Staff has discussed this internally, and so I'm aware that the ZA, however, intends to refer this item to the Planning Commission. And I have relayed that to the applicant as well.
Is staff taking the understanding that we're not just looking at what they're asking for, but also how it dovetails with the historic district, which includes circulation and parking, etc., which is usually above what we review for just a single standalone building? Agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. When we first reviewed this project, they always had plans for weddings. And they said with what they needed, this design, their existing design, provided everything they needed to accomplish that. But you're saying they need more room to have bigger weddings. How come? And that sounds like an increase in intensity.
Okay. Permission to speak?
Yeah,
It's a question to you.
Okay. So At the time, they did not have a tenant engaged for the wedding space, so it was made with a economic presumption under a letter of intent with the tenant at the time who was intending to take the wedding space. At this point, they do have a lease engaged. The number of attendees at a wedding has not changed. The same number of occupants intended for the pergola is able to comfortably fit within the wedding space. But to provide an opportunity for some change of space and a more enjoyable atmosphere, the opportunity to have outdoor weddings with a view was desired.
It's not much of a view. Go ahead.
Well, you can't see the ocean from inside.
Or from there.
They're
From
willing
the
to-
roof deck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, the roof will block it.
Okay. Have you taken into consideration, why haven't they opted to use the front plaza for the weddings?
So my understanding is that the dimensional proportional configuration did not work quite as well for a ceremony approach as a more linear pergola, which is why the intent is that a wedding party will come up on the south side and approach towards the north, whereas the plaza it would be more of a fan-shaped arrangement.
Okay.
And this is speaking for the tenant who we're hearing sort of secondhand through the owner.
Jonathan, are they currently not allowed to have amplified sound of any kind?
Correct. In the patio area, they're not permitted amplified sound.
So that would be none on the roof with all that traffic noise trying to hear a wedding. Problematic.
So let me clarify. The request does include a modification to the use permit. So currently, there's not an approval. That is going to be something that the Planning Commission is looking at. That is why they have submitted a sound study that's going to be reviewed by a third-party environmental firm before that goes to the Planning Commission for consideration. Staff had that same concern that there's really no functionality or feasibility to have a acoustic or non-amplified ceremony in that space given the traffic volume. And so my presumption was there's going to be a need for at least temporary acoustics while there's an event happening, and that's why we required a sound study to be provided. So that amendment will also be a part of the Planning Commission's discussion.
Yeah, that's another reason to go to the Planning Commission. And where are you storing all these chairs and arches and whatever, and heaters that are probably going to be required up there, etc., when you're so limited on storage as it is?
So there is not going to be any permanent furniture on the pergola. Everything will be brought up for each venue. There is a limited amount of storage in the basement of the food hall that is part of the tenant space. My understanding is that is where some of the arches may be stored, but chairs are likely to be brought in for each function from an off-site facility.
Okay.
The tenant has another wedding facility in Carlsbad, so my belief is that it would probably be coming from Carlsbad each time.
Walk that whole place. And you're aware that we are only approving buildings, not applicants, right?
Yes.
Something that I think was overlooked and with the food court concept that is pretty much what this is. I don't believe, Jonathan, there was any concern or any accommodation for to-go pickup spaces.
Correct. Yeah.
Has the city addressed that at all?
No, there had, so that was not consideration in the 2017 entitlement review to incorporate or change designation of any of the existing parking to be temporary. There is an avenue for that approval. All reductions or posted signs are codified within the code, so that would have to go through that process with our Public Works Department.
Okay, and
That would be under checkup.
That's not something that's currently proposed or
That's their only option.
or
that
expected.
needs to be resolved, yeah. I think I'll save any other changes or comments for our discussion. Let's see. No sections were provided on the height of the ceiling in the dining area. What are you proposing? I couldn't find a cross-section that gave us a height. While you're looking for that, a couple more operational problems are going to be, our typical breeze comes from the ocean over that arched window, or with the arched roof towards patio, which is like an airfoil. Wind's going to come over, create a negative pressure on that side. Anything that comes out of those heating vents on the beach side is going to come right over that thing and settle right down onto this deck. And all the noise also from your major, I think, HVAC equipment and all is on the roof of the building to the left, which is the same height, those parapet walls are the exact same height as your handrail. Which means if anybody stands up for Here Comes the Bride, they're going to be hearing all that HVAC noise.
I'm aware of that.
And I see that that's a real functional problem, and maybe something that can't be resolved. So, did you figure out a height yet on the ceiling in there? Because, I mean, it's not much higher than the doors, and I'm thinking an 8-foot ceiling
Yeah, well, these are oversized.
in that patio
Doors.
just doesn't cut it.
No, the doors are oversized height-wise.
I think, hopefully they're 8-foot doors, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, if I recall, it is greater than 10 feet, but we can be certain to
Before we
provide.
can make
Yeah, we can be certain to provide that supplemental information.
a call on this, we have to know those kind of issues. Now, originally, in the original approval, we were shown that that whole left side of let's go to the existing. This whole open area on that side was kind of where they were thinking of doing weddings. And I don't see how we're not increasing density. I'm real uncomfortable with saying the upstairs is going to be locked off, because I can see in bad inclement weather, another operator, because we're just approving the building now,
Understood.
would probably want to screen this thing in, close it off, and on sunny days, open up that top to dining. And we can't enforce that kind of stuff. We're not going to have somebody driving around saying, oh, shoot, are people sitting up there having a cocktail? And that's a concern we'll discuss. Okay, so we're assuming 10-foot minimum in the
Yes, sir.
patio? Okay, that's all my questions.
Mr. Cosgrove, any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple. So what is, it looks like, I'm just gonna stand up here and point. Is this just because it's overlaid, or is it accurate to look at this rendering and say, yep, top of that railing's about the top of this roof line here? Is that right? Are we
So-
about the same level?
So we modeled it in a different program, which is why the section cutting through looks very differently. And then having modeled it dimensionally correct, we did overlay it on the prior drawing for the sake of consistency.
So then it will be about that height?
That is correct. That's a 3 foot 6 inch railing. Well, by the time that you incorporate the railing and the low wall below it, you may thank you.
This is 3 feet from here to here?
3 foot 6 inches.
46
Correct.
inches, yeah.
That's the required handrail height.
Yeah, but that's what, it looks bigger than that. This is less, this is only 3 feet 6 inches?
That is correct.
Okay. So I have a picture of this. This is framed out now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm coming down El Camino, that's what I'm seeing now. Is that correct? That's your building?
Yes.
And that framing is this structure right here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you extend this line all the way down, what would that do to the view of the actual bowling alley?
Well, what I'm seeing is that this wall may actually be built higher than what was anticipated. So,
It's hard to say with the direction of the photograph.
I think its height was predicated on the available mechanical equipment that's going in there.
With the,
Rather than, I think, an exact
Yeah,
dimension.
from this angle, it does look that the framed wall will come up to at least the halfway point of the barrel vaulted roof, whereas that drawing looks to be about a third of the height of that barrel vaulted roof. So we can confirm that the height of the framed wall there matches the framed height of our drawings. Just to be consistent. The height, if I may use your mouse, Jonathan. I guess it's not showing.
Here, let me
Okay. The height from here to here appears to be lower in these drawings than the height as I'm seeing in that framed wall, so we would want to verify that for consistency.
So just to show you guys what I'm saying is...
Yeah, I've got the same picture.
Okay, okay. And if you just extend this all the way down, then...
Right, totally
So-
obscures it.
So we can verify that the construction matches the intent.
Okay. So do you see the concerns then with this addition? You can, with respect to the aesthetics, the
Yes,
deviation
if
from the
that
original
is the datum
approval?
line.
Yeah. So what's your feeling about that?
My feeling about that is that the pilasters of these railings do provide a higher amount of solid, which would diminish the view to the roof line compared to the railing. And so if the design review committee seeks to add more negative space by adding more railing and less pilasters, that's certainly something we would be open to. And then there would be more transparency looking to the barrel roof. We were under the impression that the barrel roof was not a highly important component, but if it is, that's certainly something that we're able to make an amendment towards.
Okay. Yeah, that's certainly what I'm hearing from the members of the public that have come and have a lot of long-standing in the community with respect to their investment in the property.
Absolutely.
So it seems legitimate to me that their concerns are right spot on, and it's really should cause some pause on the whole direction.
Programmatically, I think that having a railing there does not, in its nature, inhibit the sight line to the barrel roof, but there could be other approaches that enable a higher degree of view.
It's almost like I think we've got two separate issues here. One issue is, should that space be made? You know, which, and now we're enclosing what was going to be an open spaced area with natural lighting and natural airflow.
Why don't you reserve that for a discussion?
Okay.
Unless you have another.
No, well, this is leading to a point, which is, you got that, should it be done? And then how do you, if you're going to do it, then how do you do it to fit this? So what are the considerations you guys made in this new design with respect to those trade-offs? Well, can you just walk us through your thinking on how you did the design?
Certainly. Would you be willing to pull up the elevation? So, taking from a solid pilaster, open roof, solid pilaster concept, we looked to implore as much of that along the roof line as possible for the sake of consistency.
Okay.
There were more solid walls along the ground floor than what we felt was preferred on the portico, because we felt like a open feeling was preferable, was desirable. So that's why we didn't copy verbatim, but we took components in an intent to be sympathetic to what had already been approved. There are some other structures that we also chose not to copy because we didn't want to make it a taller structure than what was necessary. So our intent was to keep it as low as structurally viable and as sympathetic to the surrounding wall of the plaza.
How about air and light with respect to now that open courtyard area that's now enclosed?
So can you go to the section, please?
Sure. Or the elevation.
So by trying to keep the structure as high and minimal as possible, our intent is to be able to bring light in, particularly from the east side to the extent possible.
Into the courtyard area?
Into the courtyard
that was previously going to be open. You're saying it's not completely sealed off?
Oh, it's so this is a walkable structure, but because we're looking at a minimum 10-foot clearance, there will be a sizable amount of light that is able to come in from the east side underneath this.
On the other side of the patio, or whatever?
So, unfortunately, on the other side, the west side, due to the nature that we have to have 2 stairs and an elevator to get up, there is not much light that is able to penetrate from the west side.
Okay.
So we brought the 2 together and then provided the vertical circulation in an area that we felt minimized the impact that these would bring, because if we put it anywhere else, it would become a visual detriment. So that's why these are tucked into the backside to the extent possible.
Is the ingress and egress affected of the courtyard with these changes?
I would say minimally, if you'd be willing to go to a plan.
So
It's hard for me to tell that.
yeah, so I can touch on that quickly. So this area of blue is the area of work, and the original proposal included the walls here are the same, but the original proposal just included an entrance here and a down to the right and wrap back. But now that they're attempting to keep a path of travel on private property, the party would go through here, continue across, and then go down. So it just shifts this ramp inwards a bit.
About 4 feet.
So they'll come down this ramp to enter the space. So that's the change of ingress, is it just is pushed in a little bit.
Would you be willing to pan to the north?
And Jonathan, while you have that, where's the DG you guys
So,
want to put?
This is all still existing to remain. So there's point of entry.
Not changed.
Correct.
Not changed here, and really not changed in terms of the sidewalk access there either.
Okay.
And the door into the food hall is also retained exactly as it was.
Okay.
So this portion here, this hatched element, is what's shown as, if you see the pop-out note, circulation path, but is concrete as shown. So added sidewalk for access between. This is the portion right now, or the 2017 entitlements. This is just landscape space.
Yeah.
And so now shown as a sidewalk, and staff's recommendation was instead of a sidewalk to have DG through this area. That's just a more compatible treatment with the landscaping.
Mm-hmm. And where's the fountain that you said might go away?
It's in this location here.
On the wall?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a wall
So-
fountain.
May I speak on that?
Yeah.
So our concern is not that putting DG in would be problematic in any capacity, but functionally, if people are traversing from a wedding function here to a reception here, they would choose to go on the public property and use the sidewalk, which would have been encouraged to create a path specifically avoiding. So
There's no back entrance? I guess it's a trash area.
Correct.
It's trash and service in the back.
Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
in here.
Yeah.
Correct. So we absolutely could put in a DG path. My concern is that, similar to seeing a sharp grass corner and you see people carving their own path, that we could provide an on-property path completely and to staff's recommendation, but that over time we have no way of restricting them from taking a concrete sidewalk, which the city of San Clemente has advised that we stay on our property. So we're happy to do whatever. I just, as you were talking about, we have no way of controlling things. We have no way of controlling if they would stay on private property. But I think we could encourage that if it were concrete versus DG.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Can you respond to Mr. Culbertson's comments about the square footage? The 22, just rough, his rough back of the napkin count versus the 19.
If you'd be willing to give us a moment,
Yeah.
we're happy to.
Can I ask a quick question of Jonathan while we're waiting? Aren't they losing square footage to the dining public area by adding the 2 stairwells and the elevator? Isn't that diminishing the public eating area?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll just zoom into
So
the
those
area.
people, I'm telling you, are
discussion.
gonna come to the lawn of the casino to eat their food.
So yes, there's a reduction in
What's
space.
the square footage reduction?
We can get that. I don't have that handy though.
Because she's getting at what I was trying to get at earlier, which is you're changing, you're making a change to the space underneath of this. Like I said, there's a difference between should you and could you, right? And if you did, the change is dramatic. It's going from light and airy to enclosed, dark. And that's what I was trying to get at you. What do you think, what's your planning there? What's the design to make it inviting? And you went from open to closed. You went from light to dark. You went from airy to not airy, and acoustically talking, and it's just going to be loud. What makes that space attractive anymore? So I was trying to, from, you're an architect, you're doing the design, you're obviously putting yourself in that spot, and you're
Correct.
thinking about all those elements. I was trying to draw that out of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of
She just asked it better than me.
Okay. So there are plenty of historical references and guidelines of particularly like Hispanic covered porches that are intended to be inviting, welcoming centers, and that's why things like a fireplace was a earlier component. We're intending to make it to that similar feel. So artificial light will certainly help. Heaters will certainly help. Some fans will certainly help. But it is intended to be a lively space by having reverberating acoustics. So I do recognize that we're adding more hard surface that would create echo, but to create a lively, entertaining space, we actually welcome that.
You don't feel it's going to be darker? You don't feel that way?
It will be darker than if it was simply a trellis, but I do not believe that it would be too dark to be enjoyable.
I think it's important to delineate private from public space. public space is being diminished, private space is being amplified.
When you say private, you mean on the top?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's private.
Yeah.
The private events and not open to the public is my understanding, big gates keeping them out during the week.
So that space is not to be used other than for weddings, is what you're saying?
The rooftop, correct.
So when there's not an event going on, it's just closed off.
Closed off. Locked.
With this operator.
Right. I have a question for Larry. You mentioned there's something that's being built that
That was
doesn't
also a
match
staff recommendation, correct?
the
Correct.
approved
Yeah.
drawings.
Railings, I don't know if those have already been approved or not,
We'd
but
love to
there's
speak on
some
that.
railings that I saw that have been built.
Are you guys aware of this?
Sorry, I missed the question.
So we were just at the site before we came here. We didn't see
Okay.
any trellis or anything. There is some temporary 2x4 structure up there for workman safety. Maybe that's what you saw.
Oh, the roof railing?
Around the edge.
Nothing pertaining to this pergola structure
no,
has
nothing.
been constructed
Yeah, no,
in
this is
foundations or
unrelated,
anything.
but-
Okay,
Just during construction.
okay.
It's the
so
safety
that's
rail.
temporary.
Okay.
Safety rail.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
So you understand that, Larry? Okay.
I just wanted to find out about the square footage thing. That's my last question for these guys. So
We are
if you want to go,
actively
Steve, while
working
you
on
still
that.
figure
Yeah, no, the deck itself, not including the stairs or chairlift, 2242. Prior was 1666.
So Larry is correct. It's not 19, it's 22-ish.
Correct.
That
yeah.
seems reasonable.
Which is about a 35%.
Yeah, it's about 35% increase, right?
One of the things that
Was that an application?
Commissioner
that we-
Crandall mentioned was the
the
effect
number
of
was
the wind
obtained?
over
The narrative.
top of the roof. My contention is that predominantly onshore winds are going to create a Venturi effect underneath that balcony. It's going to be freezing under there because the wind is just going to come blowing right through there. In terms of discussion, you're basically killing this space underneath that proposed deck. To me, it's unusable. I wouldn't go there. Like you said, I'd go to probably to the
lawn
beach
Or the beach club lawn.
yeah. So you're taking what's could be a good space, a roof deck, if it was open to the public, but it isn't, and you're killing the space that is currently really the only nice outdoor space to eat when you're coming off of a facility that's, by the way, serving food and drink.
I think you're going to be reducing occupancy on that ground floor too by taking up stairwell space and elevator space.
Yeah, well, I wasn't here when this project was approved, so that's kind of a given. Okay,
Yeah.
I might have had some concerns about it even then, but so from a functional standpoint, I can't see any way to recommend an approval on this just for myself, but also from an architectural standpoint, the openness of that corner is super important to the sort of setting of this historical structure. And that completely destroys that as well. I hate to use the word destroys or kills because they're violent terms, but it's really to that kind of an impact from what I can see, And again, I'm just looking at it from those two, the standpoint of the architecture and the function of that space.
If a solar study and photometric study were to be supplementally added, would that be entertained? by
I've
the
been in
design
spaces
review?
like this. I don't need to have a study. It's on the north side already, so it's already in shade most of the time. In the summertime, you're going to get some sun in there, but with this deck, it's going to be dark all the time, all year, and windy and cold, and the heaters and indirect light don't make up for that. It's just solid structure this big. I could see if there was little deck areas here and there, even that would be tough because it's such a small area. It's a tough one. I think figuring out a way to use the courtyard for weddings would be a better idea.
That was the initial intent.
Yeah, than trying to add this roof deck that nobody can use.
Well, you're on
Except
that
for the
thought,
wedding.
okay. Jonathan, can you research it and find out in the original approval how many occupants were they allowed for a wedding? Because the parking requirements were based on full use of both the theater, the restaurant, and the wedding. Knowing that the wedding took up some of the seating from the dining area. And what we've been presented with today says there is no impact or increase in density, and I just don't get it. I mean, it just visually, it doesn't seem to make sense, because they're adding as much square footage over this patio as they can, regardless of what the occupancy is up there.
I'm sorry, could you explain that part?
Okay, so 528 people for the weddings is what was shown in the prior. That includes, I think, staff members.
No way.
So existing theater seating at 450. So this goes back, these are the plans from 2017, and then 200 seats at the bowling alley. And that's combined between interior and
So where
exterior.
are they at now?
For
With
which
this
of the,
proposal?
they did not submit a proposed
Can't
change
make a
in.
determination then. Okay?
Wait, so you're saying
We're gonna look at
450
this guy.
people could go, are going to
In
go
the
up there?
theater?
In the theater building.
Right, but
Oh, for the roof deck.
right.
I think that they did include
40.
an occupancy number for the roof deck on the plans.
It's just the seating area. number.
Oh, it's just your seating area.
Let's go ahead and open
So,
up discussion.
Yeah,
using
kind of
using the
our-
square footage we
Kinda ease
provided
into it.
and the building code of 5 square feet for unconcentrated seating, it would be less than 300 occupants on the roof.
What is the fire code and the code for that space?
Well, it would be classified as an assembly occupancy, and the occupancy square footage would be 5. So
You're saying 300 on the upper deck?
under 300.
Yeah, but with the
Which would be equal down below, that's 600 something.
Yeah.
We have a west wing, 2,200 square feet, that we host weddings, and the fire marshal gave us an occupancy of 133 people. So I don't know where you're getting 300 from.
Some of that's going to have to do with exiting, and I'm going to caveat this with I'm not an expert, but when there are adjoining areas that connect, they'll start to count those rooms as if one room flows into the next for combined occupancy. So sometimes there is limited occupancy in certain spaces when they don't have their own independent exits, or if there's a space flowing into that
But
area.
your question is the deck, right? You're asking.
The deck.
And the occupant load factor for assembly there is 7 square feet per person. But you're saying it's actually 5.
Even at 7, that would be less than 300 square feet.
For the entire deck,
Correct.
which is over 2,000. What do we figure? It's 2,200.
That's less people than the event center
Yeah.
wedding size.
And- If I may speak, it was the staff's recommendation also that to codify or restrict that the event center and the upper pergola have only one occupant between the two. So even if people were interested in eating at the food court and taking it upstairs, like, we have the gates at staff's recommendation not to enable that and to have it be a tenant space. So
Okay. Yeah, we're in discussion mode now, I think. Got past the questions. And, we're here to just discuss how this could be done or improved. But there's a bigger question, I guess, bigger concern.
Could you try again?
No, sorry.
Yeah, would you repeat
You
yourself?
probably get that a lot, don't you?
It's already being recorded over here. The bigger issue, I think, is it even appropriate, to add that kind of a structure to this, which I know was painstakingly approved conditional use permit, as even to consider it as an amendment, which is what we're looking at, right? An amendment to the CUP. I think it's a significant impact to where you can't enclose that space. I mean, it's basically what you're doing is you're enclosing that corner. So I can't, for myself, you guys may disagree, but for myself, I can't see any way that we could recommend any solution close to this to the ZA or to the Planning Commission. So normally we try to be productive here and say, maybe you could do this or you could do that, but this is such a major impact. You guys may have some ideas. I don't know. I'll have to defer to my fellow committee, but I don't think I have a lot that I can personally add here. I hate to say that because usually there's some kind of a solution, but it really hurts the structure, the historic quality, and that space renders it unusable for the public use, which is what it's there for. I hate to be so negative, but what do you guys think?
Okay, I'll go through my thinking here that we've taken what was a food court and dining, and we've made it the little sister to the theater, where for the food court, all of a sudden, I think they are losing a ton of amenities that they would have with the initial design. And that's a hard thing to make pencil in the first place. But to make that a little less inviting, to increase something that was already planned. They always planned weddings down in this area, and the whole reason it was, they call it, I don't remember what they called it actually. In that patio, it was like a multi-purpose space or whatever you want to call it. To have weddings down there or inside or in the courtyard at the front of the theater. And I'm concerned that we really don't have enough information to make any kind of decision on this. Architecturally, could you make something like that work? I'm saying that if you do an acoustic study, that means every one of those handrails is probably going to have upstairs glass on it and probably going up above the handrail, which causes a second problem of you're also then making that interior space noise of its own accord for noise. You've got all that mechanical equipment noise, you've got all the every single vent from all these cooking businesses are going to come right over there into this space. I think in a big picture it may look good to your client, but I don't, as an architect, I would probably say I don't think it's worth it to you to do it. I think it causes way too many problems, and I want to just, not necessarily specific to this project, but to the whole thing. I think anytime we look at something within our historic district, we need to look at having stiffer approvals because we got to consider every single historic building in there and how each one impacts itself from here on in. I would probably fight the city's recommendation to say you can't use the sidewalk because I think all that planting and the fountain and all in front of the theater is a huge amenity because this is now a pedestrian.
It's within the pedestrian overlay.
I don't know if it's in the overlay or not, but now that it's the historic district, it's as far as I'm concerned, a pedestrian-oriented site. So we got to make all the circulation and all for pedestrian. So at this time, I couldn't give it a blessing because I don't think there's enough information. And I think as an architect, we can usually find solutions aesthetically that may not work, that look okay. But I think the downside to this way outweighs the upside.
Well, the height, I think, is a
Height of the
constraint.
arch.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a constraint because it's a low-slung building. If it was some of these buildings, historic buildings are tall, and you could get 15 to 20 feet under there, you might be able to make it work. But for that amount of depth and the width of that thing, to have, I know there's going to be structure, there's going to be lighting, there's going to be stuff. It's going to be down at like 9 feet, 8.5, 9 feet. I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be tough. So that constraint alone, I think, keeps you from being able to build a solid deck. I don't know.
Well, these guys are architects, they know their stuff, they've seen a ton of projects, they have worked with applicants to smooth things over. When they're saying they can't do it, that's legit. I would just say as a non-architect on here, from a community value standpoint, this intersection's probably the highest in the city. Not talking traffic flow, I'm talking what the community sees as the heart and soul of its town. It's right here, and it's mainly embodied in this building and the one next to it. This is almost sacred, what you're talking about here, the space and how people feel about it. And so to do anything to degrade that public experience or to take that away and try and turn it into something that people in this room and others worked really long and hard to get dialed to a certain specific place. I think that's just something to really be respected. And we do see that San Clemente is, sometimes you have to live here to know this. It's just not always intuitive to the outsider who's kind of coming in and looking at this from this is what I want to do with my business. We run into that a lot, and we're talking diagonally to applicant diagonally across the street that wants to do a 49-room boutique hotel. Mm-hmm. Same kind of conversations. But this is an important, valuable space to the community, and the bar is high, the expectations are high. And when you lay on top of that the historic district and the value that people put into this, and that defines the heartbeat of the town, that's the charm of the town, is this stuff. We don't want to mess with that. We want to keep it as close to original as we can. We want to keep it as close to as enjoyable, usable, pristine. We want to, that's the public interest we're really trying to protect. So that would be the feedback I would give you, is that this is, you have the good in that you have a spot that people want to be in. They're waiting, just all I hear is, why is this thing in sticks for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years? When is it going to be done? This is anticipated. People are looking forward to it. That's the plus, right? This is going to be very popular. The downside is you've got to tread carefully with these kinds of changes. They're not just going to be, oh yeah, sure, no problem. It's going to be really looked at from the perspective of, does this work in the context of what's been there in the past and how it's been used in the past, and then the new expectations established with this approval, original approval, to go forward. So I think deviating from that significantly in a way that's impactful as this is the downside to that. You have this special place, and I think that what you're hearing today is we really want to retain that, what keeps it that unique, special, and we want to make it, something that guests enjoy, people at the beach enjoy. This is not just a wedding venue, right? It's more than that, and it's going to be very important for the openness, the public access, ingress, egress. I'm going to spend my day now at North Beach. If you go to North Beach today, it's empty. That's going to change in 2 years. When that hotel's built, when this is open, it's going to be competing directly with the pier for attention, for time, for people to go to, because it will be the new draw, and it will be new, and it'll be exciting. And I think there's just that public interface, the language that this building is going to speak to the public is critical. That it be inviting and it have a purpose to say, you're home. When you're here, you're home in San Clemente. So therefore, I think, the respect that, we're giving this site is going to be at the top. I hope that's helpful.
It's understood.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think
I mean, it's pretty rare when we can't come up with what we think.
Something to work
I mean, you
around.
guys are welcome to try to come up with ideas, but unfortunately, there's not, I don't think, a lot of helpful advice that we can give you on closing that space.
May I ask a question, just sort of to understand
Yeah.
where a line might be drawn? If we were to keep the exact same size of pergola, but put a solid surface over it for the sake of shading and rain protection and such, is that something that you could or could not support, given its existing size, no use or occupancy change and such, but it would certainly change the solar and shade aspect of the space underneath?
Well, anything you put up there that was solid would have the same effect.
Yes, it would.
So, again, there's, you could possibly look at some translucent material that would shed the rain, I guess. But then that's going to have an impact on the structure, the historic quality. I mean, you can't use these modern techniques with a historic structure. So could it be done? Gosh, I can't think of a way, but I'm not the world's greatest architect. I'm probably a few down. Anyway.
Of rain getting San Clemente that
Yeah, I mean,
ROI is there.
I guess that's a possible way to look at it. Is that the concern? Is that they don't want to use that
Not
space?
necessarily. I'm trying to understand where a line.
and you've got to report back to your.
Of course. It's unfortunate that there's the two issues. There's the structure itself, which is historical, and it's a sort of a solid, it's a Spanish Revival architecture, and these translucent covers and stuff like that, you just didn't see them. We're trying to maintain that integrity. And then it's also the function of that public space underneath. And for that to be anything but open air, it's really going to drop in value significantly. And it's going to hurt these tenants that have already agreed to go into the space, as far as I know. I mean, our tenants are lined up to go in there, right?
I don't have the details of any lease agreements, et cetera, but yes, they have announced a number of.
But we have to look at these things and say, okay, how is this going to be how is it going to have the best potential of being successful for what it's designed for? And I think this proposal is a counter to that for what it's designed to do. From what I can tell, again, I wasn't here.
And I'm always hesitant to have buildings designed where we are forced to enforce their use. In other words, building a building so big that you can only use part of it at any one time, and we're supposed to keep tabs on that. We're approving a building, not the applicant. Would your applicant may be just fine and forthcoming, the next one may not be. You know, planning commissions and city councils come and go. I mean, this could be butchered by somebody coming in trying to, well, let's enclose that lower one now that it's roofed. Close it off, put windows around the thing, and we'll put a tent structure on top of it. We're going to have to battle. But I don't see that that's a good thing for the applicant or the city to design it where you got to have half of it gated off 90% of the time. And that's the most visible thing that people probably sitting in that patio are going to see, those two stairwells and that elevator, and say, how come we can't go up there? You know, that is a bit of an eyesore.
Yeah.
In that whole space.
Just being empty.
Not just a bit, it's a whole lot of eyesore.
Yeah, could you make it into like a roof garden or something? Well, no, you can't do that because it needs to be open for a wedding. You know, so it's basically like a roof. That's usable every once in a while. So it's a tough one. I mean, you guys,
And
I commend you for making a strong effort here, but it's really it's the use and the existing approval that's, and like Commissioner Cosgrove says, that important corner in the city, which we're looking at. We love to see stuff get built in these important areas, but that's why we have to really
And it is
scrutinize.
a pseudo gateway. I don't know if you can call that a full gateway, but I think the historic districts now.
It is identified as a gateway.
So
Yeah, it is a gateway corner.
a lot of public.
That's what we talked to the gallery about.
And does the public want to see wedding venues? We're a good business, and you've got a brand new one going in just a block up the hill, and next door, two next door, both the beach club and the casino. And they aren't quite as visible. This is pretty visible. I was worried about standing heaters and umbrellas on the hot day during the summer. You're going to have umbrellas up there and haul them up and down. And I think that distracts from the whole historic
But there,
pattern of it.
this may be not what you guys want to hear, but there is great synergy. Her location and the beach club, they can have outdoor venues there for the ceremony and walk over to your event space to have the reception. I mean, there is synergy for it to happen. Just may not be all as the way this would envision it. But I'm not trying to sell you, but I mean, that is something for the ownership of your building to really consider, is that what you see today is not what it's going to be like in 2 or 3 years from now. It's going to be dramatically upscale, different. The energy is going to be different. More people are going to be there. And having partnerships with these other venues may not be a bad idea, right? And, maybe there's going to be a flow the other way when they want a bigger reception area and that they're hosting something and then they go over to your place. I mean, I don't know. There's something to think about.
And it would probably be good if we do meet again to have the actual applicant here so they can hear it firsthand.
It's always tough for you guys. You got to go back and
Yeah,
give them the bad news.
Been there, done that.
Is there anything else you'd like us to do today, Jonathan?
No, I think that we can proceed with the remainder of the agenda.
Okay, thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you for your time.
All right,
And
what
despite
else
what
we
you've
got?
heard, we're really here to help work with you to
Yeah.
find a solution. You just haven't found one.
Okay, new business, none. Old business, no. Oral and written communication.
Don't want to make any
there
statements.
anybody
out
here?
that, you know.
Anybody here wants to make any other comments or
It's all been said.
statements?
It's all been said.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we try to find solutions with this one.
It's always important to find solutions, as you say,
Yeah.
but this is not solvable.
And I wanted to stress to Jonathan that if this was a standalone building, not in the district, it would take on a whole different tone, but trying to keep that whole district one cohesive thing, and this is what's visible from El Camino.
Yeah.
Boom.
That upper deck would be great for homeless.
That's what I was thinking. They're going to be up there in a heartbeat. That little gate's not going to stop
They'll
over 2 seconds.
struggle with the patio too. They'll probably have to have a garden.
You know, I wasn't trying to be kind of off the cuff here, but I think there is a lot of synergy there, and your office in particular should be bridging these different businesses, talking to each other like, hey, we can work together as a affinity group, right? There's a lot of synergy there, and can change, that's something you could have a conversation with
Okay,
them.
I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn
Yeah.
Okay.
to the next meeting Wednesday, March 15th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
And I don't have anything after this, so I'm happy to